Yeah, but this hasn't
Okay.
been. I don't even think that these were written down at this point. I think that they're just popular poems in the minds of the people because they were not a literary society. They were an oral society at that point.
Right. Just to point this out as well, or to throw a curveball, is that the stories, particularly about Jesus in the Quran, they happen to be the, say, pseudo gospels and so on, like probably from the area of Syria that they would have been around.
Yeah, they were
So,
all
do you think that they
Miaphysite.
had?
Yeah, all of these
Yes.
texts are
So,
Miaphysite. What they call the Gnostic Gospels are Gnostic because because the Roman Christians call them Gnostic as an attack against the monophysites. But from the monophysite point of view, these are standard Gospels. This is legitimate truth. There's nothing wrong with these. These are not Gnostic in any way at all. It's just that
okay, so they would have been actually taken from those as opposed to say the Catholic
yeah. So
canon.
Infancy
Yeah.
Gospel of Thomas, for example, is in there. The comments on the, and not only that, but there are references to um, uh, there's plenty of Talmudic references in there. So we definitely know that these were some kind of Messianic Noahides, and they were Miaphysite in their belief concerning Jesus of Nazareth. They were not Diophysite because the gospel narratives we see in the Quran are from this Miaphysite tradition, not from the Diophysite tradition. Yes.
Okay, so then the difference between, say, or the beef that Umar has is not because, say, it's he's a Jew and he's fighting against Christians, but because he's in a messianic, say, movement, and he disagrees as to what the Messiah is for those Christians, for example, in Gaza and so on. So they all believe in
Yeah.
Messiah being very, very different, and Umar basically takes no prisoners.
Yes. Well, the Karaites have their own story about Jesus, and Jesus, from the Karaite point of view, is the son of Mary Magdalene, and he was opposed to rabbinical Judaism, and he was just a human being who led a rebellion. So it's a very different story. They don't have the Karaites have no knowledge of Jesus of Nazareth, the teacher of Mary Magdalene. They have no knowledge of that. The Karaites only have knowledge of Jesus, the son of Mary Magdalene. Mary Magdalene had a son and named her son after her teacher. The Karaites have no knowledge of her teacher. They only have knowledge of her son. So he would have thought that the Christians were worshipping the son of Mary Magdalene, who is very clearly a human in Karaite tradition, and he would have considered the Christians of Gaza to have been just idolaters, just pagan idolaters. Whereas the Messiah for Messianic Noahides is the same angel who appeared to Moses, who appeared to the prophets after Moses, Isaiah, to Ezekiel, to Elijah. This is the same angelic being that appears as a burning bush. This is the Messiah for Messianic Noahides. They recognized Jesus of Nazareth, the teacher of Mary Magdalene, as nothing but an appearance, yet another appearance of the same Jewish Messiah, and that is acceptable position. And Omar would have been thinking, okay, well, that's Muhammad. That's the same Muhammad of Himyar. But he would have thought that the Christians were worshipping the son of Magdalena, and he wouldn't have seen the two Jesuses as anything related at all. They would have been very different things. The Messianic Noahides maybe just calling him by Jewish names, like Messiah, for example. They could have referred to him as the Tzemach. They could have referred to him as Shiloh. They could have many different ways of referring to it as Adon. There are many different ways of referring to the Messiah, and even in the Song of Solomon, in the Song of Songs, in I think it's chapter 5 verse 16, they refer to him as Mahamadim. So Mahamadim is a Hebrew way of referring to him, and so they would have used all these words of referring to him. Yeshia as another way of referring to him. I think that they could use the word Isa to refer to him as well. This is a Persian name. And it should be noted that according to rabbinical Judaism, the name Yeshua itself is a sacred name and should not be pronounced. It's sacred. So they wouldn't have been necessarily calling him Yeshua. So they wouldn't have, from Omar's regard, from Omar's point of view, he's got a group of kind of semi-Jewish sort of converts here who all are following the Jewish Messiah, and they have this story about him from these Gnostic Gospels, so-called Gnostic Gospels, or Miaphysite Gospels. And then he comes into contact with these Roman Christians who he's already experienced before, who are Diophysites and have their own Gospels. And he, as far as he's concerned, these are two very different things. He doesn't see a relationship between the two. The infancy Gospel of Jesus has him talking as a child. The Christians in the Roman tradition, they don't have that. There are Christmas carols. For example, the cherry tree carol, even in English language, which talks about Jesus talking as a child and talks about his mother getting the fruit from the tree when he's born, which is in the Quran. These are passages in the Quran, but these are folk tales which preserved amongst Miaphysite Christians in Europe, who always existed in Europe, but they were always persecuted in Europe. They were never part of the standard mainstream. That's why, the cherry carol is not very well known amongst Christmas carols. There are many other Christmas carols which are much more popular than the cherry tree carol, which begins, Joseph was an old man, and a very old man was he. This is how it goes. It tells the story of how, when after giving birth to Jesus, Mary was hungry and she wants some fruit from the tree, and the baby Jesus speaks, and the tree bends down, and she takes the cherries from the tree. This is in the Quran, but this is a Christmas carol, which you don't hear much about because it's a folk carol, as opposed to the standard Diophysite Christian doctrine where Jesus isn't speaking as a child. See, so these things are not completely unheard of in European Christian tradition, but they are very strong part of the Miaphysite Oriental Christian tradition or Messianic tradition. Okay.
So Umar doesn't really see much difference between different factions. He sees lots of them being very compatible and some that are very incompatible. But then he has some sort of change of hearts and jumps boat.
Yeah. So, he's conquered Jerusalem in 636, and he's promised everybody, according to the strong Karaite and Sadducee belief, that the Messiah is going to come down from heaven once they establish this temple sacrifices, and he's going to take up residence in the Holy of Holies. Well, along comes 646, and nothing has happened yet. So he's starting to, you just think about it. You've got no television to distract you. You've got no theater. You've got no movies to distract you. You haven't got books to distract you. You're a population who've just conquered the Holy Land. And just waiting a week is a long time. You're spending all of your focus these days is on religious scriptures, because that's the time we're talking about. At that time, the only focus is really religious scriptures. You're reading religious scriptures every day, every week. You've got sermons about it. Months are passing by, and people are feeling, okay, well, we've got to start building. First of all, we have to put the shrine in place. A year has passed. That's a long time, but it's only the first year. A second year has passed. That's a long time. A third year has passed. That's a very long time. A fourth year has passed. That's a very, very long time. A fifth year, a sixth year, a seventh year, an eighth year. The Messiah hasn't come yet. He's losing face. This is a serious issue for him. And what we hear is that he has a debate. It's actually in a manuscript which was preserved from 874. The manuscript we have is 874, but it tells a story of something much, much earlier. A disputation between somebody called a patriarch called John and the emir. It doesn't say who he is. It just calls him the emir in Jerusalem. Okay, it's recorded that on the 9th of May in 644, this emir he invited the Syriac Orthodox leader. Now it's called Syriac Orthodox Church, but at that time there was no Syriac Orthodox Church, but he was the leader, a representative of the Syriac Christians, Messianics, who is John the Third of Seder. Seder is where we've got Sidro, the Sidur. John the First of the Sidur. A Siddur is a phrase for a Jewish prayer book. So John the Third of the Sidur, that's his name, Sidro in Syriac. He's invited by the emir to explain what is it that these Christians around us are believing, these Byzantines, these Romans around us. And John explains the religion, and the emir is very, very confused because he says, well, that's nothing like the story of Jesus as I know it. And they have a bit of a disputation, a bit of an argument. And then in the end, the emir requests that John organize the translation of the Christian Gospels, of the four Gospels, the New Testament, into Arabic for him. He orders the translation from Syriac into Arabic so he can understand exactly what they are talking about.
Okay, and we're talking about the Gospels.
Yeah, the New Testament as we know it.
Yeah. Okay. And also you said the dates. Actually, you said 644. This is in 644, and also then something up in 646. According to the standard Islamic narrative,
I think he converts by 646. But the very important thing that happens before his conversion is this disputation on the 9th of May in 644.
Okay, but you still think that it is Umar, and the standard Islamic narrative, the date about his death is wrong. I think it's 642. Yeah, I think if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I think this is Umar, the same one who is come in and taken control of the place.
Right, and probably because you haven't actually found any documents that says that the guy who actually entered Jerusalem was already dead, and it seems to be like his death happens later, and it matches the account from the standard Islamic narrative, except for the dates, right? So you don't have...
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, okay.
In the standard Islamic narrative, we have a radical conversion of Omar when he realizes that his sister, who he killed for following the gospel, for following the Quran, or Kariana, which is actually that phrase as well, which is a Syriac prayer book, which is popular. By the way, you can buy that Kariana today. It's called the what's it called? The Palestinian Syriac Lectionary. You can buy it on Amazon. It's not expensive. And he kills his sister for following this. And then he realizes what it says, because I think he couldn't read it first, but eventually he starts to learn to read it. Once he understands it, he realizes that he killed his sister for nothing, and he's heartbroken, and he converts to Islam. That's the standard Islamic narrative. And I think something like that happens. The emir is totally confused by this story of Jesus. As far as he knows, it's completely different from the story which is being told to him from the New Testament. So he orders the translation of the Christian materials into Arabic, and the Banu Uqayl and the Tanuch and the Tayaya translate it for him. And it is alleged that the emir initially demanded that mentions of the name of Christ and baptism and the cross should be removed from the translation, but he relented following John's refusal to alter any of the details. He wanted to translate it honestly, exactly as it said. And so he said, okay, fine, translate it exactly as it said, even though it seems to him to be blasphemous. He let it and translated as it was. And this was very, very important point, pivotal point. When the translation came, he changed his attitude completely towards Christians. We have an indication that when this is very interesting, when John's messenger, the church's messenger, brings the translation to him, the messenger is called Gabriel. And when the messenger, Gabriel of Cartman, brings the translation of the Kariana to him, of the Quran to him, and that he greets him with great respect and honor, and appears to be converted by him. That's very interesting.
Appears, saying, so he reads actually a translation of the gospel into Arabic, but that would make him then a Christian in the, say, Catholic sense, for need of a better word.
Because he's been telling all of his people that Muhammad is going to come down from heaven and rule them. And so all that I think happens is, at this point, the coins come about. You know about his coins, the Muhammad coins have a picture of Jesus on them, holding the cross with a cross on his head. It's very clearly this is Jesus. Now, people say, well, how do you know it's not just another saint holding the cross? Because saints hold the instrument of their torture with them. For example, if it was Saint Peter who was being depicted, he would hold a cross, but the cross would be upside down because he was crucified upside down. If it was, say, Saint James who was on the coin, it would be holding a sword because Saint James was killed by the sword. But this one is holding a cross, and there is a cross on his head, or a cross above him on a mountain behind him. Maybe it's difficult to tell. So this is definitely Jesus who is holding the cross in this coin, but the name underneath is written Muhammad.
Okay, so the belief from the Muhammad of the 520s as the Spirit of God has now changed to the persona of Jesus as the Messiah.
Yeah. So what he promised his people that Muhammad would come, and it seems like what he decides is like to say to his people, yes, Muhammad did come. It turned out it was Jesus all along, and so they So he doesn't lose face. He doesn't lose face. Very political,
okay. Well,
but I think there's sincerity in it as well.
He doesn't lose face, he just loses his life very shortly after, right? But it's now converted, say, for need of a better word, he's now a Christian from
a Messianic Noahide at the very least. Yeah, and you will say, well, how can a Jew become a Noahide? And the answer is because Karaites are regarded as apostates, and apostates in Judaism must come to Noahide Judaism. Originally, that's what the teaching is. They have to come to Noahide Judaism rather than to Orthodox Judaism, because the idea is they can never be members of the Kehillah, which is the central body of religious Orthodox Jews ever again. Really, they can only really be Noahides. So he would have adopted Noahide Judaism. Yeah.
And then actually once he converts, even though we're thinking about everything that happened from a religious point of view, but in the end, most of the things going on in the ground is people trying to find ways of gaining power and stuff. So once he has actually done this U-turn, this is going to open up for all of his enemies to actually take advantage of that in order to gain power. Yeah. And that's perhaps when the whole Ali thing begins.
Well, I think what happens first is he wants to get now standard Islamic narrative says that Omar was the first person to start collecting the Quran, and he commissioned Zayd ibn Thabit to do that. But at this point, he wanted to get a mushaf of these of these verses from Ali, and Ali's wife Fatima refused, and he kicked the door down on her, causing her to have a miscarriage, and eventually she died in the future because of that miscarriage. But she refused to hand the manuscript over to him, so he instead commissioned Zayd ibn Thabit to go around and collect narrations anywhere he could find it from anybody who could. But that he died before he did anything with this. This was just left in the possession of his daughter, who didn't do anything with it until the following Caliph, Uthman, asked her for it, and he completed the collection of these narrations with reference to Ali's Mus'haf, and that became the Quran as we know it. But apparently the collection began with Omar.
Okay, but if he had actually commissioned the Gospels to be translated into Arabic, and now he's reading that, why isn't he just having those Gospels just sent everywhere and saying, okay, so now we are Christians and that's that? Why is he going around to create something else?
No, well, I think he was. You're missing that there is no entertainment for anybody in those days. There's no TV. There's no radio. There's no theater that you go to with performances.
Are you sure? Netflix? I think Netflix was around in the 630s, wasn't it?
The only thing you have is basically religious stories and folk tales and some street performers. You have street performers who are performing popular narrations for people to as their intended entertainment. That's it. So as a leader of a state, the morale of your troops and the education of your society to make sure everybody is on the same page is very important to you. And the main vehicle for that propaganda was street performances. And I think he was collecting Hanzala's poetry for this purpose. He was going to basically filter out and sift through and decide what was good to, because it was already popular, what was good to promote and what was not good to promote. So I think that was actually part of the general operation of the society at that time. It's very important to make sure that you've got your population on the same page.
Okay, so you think the basically they were not, because at the moment the Quran and say the Gospels, they contradict each other. So when he got the Gospels and then he tried to get street performances, say for people to go out there and spread it, it would be quite different to what we have today. It will probably be a lot larger. It would have a lot more compatibility with the Gospels. But of course, canonizations and things happened later. But when during that time is when Uthman is supposed to be putting together the Quran. This is what Umar is trying to actually do, but it is not the Quran that we have today. Is say much of what we have today, but a lot more Christian than it currently is.
Well, I think we actually do have the exact materials that Omar collected. I think it's the codex which comes from the Amr Masjid in Fustat. I think that is actually the materials that Omar collected there. I think we have it. Today with us, and it's not the complete Quran, and it is. I've done videos on my channel where I've gone through lines of it and explained the difference between it and the modern day Quran. So I've had a picture on the screen and I've gone through it, and you see that there are spelling differences, there are word differences, minor differences, but it's basically the same Quran.
Okay.
Basically. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Actually, taking one step back from the Quran, is it now fair? Is it fair to assume that, seeing as Umar was then from the south and he got his armies to the north and then they conquered Jerusalem, that actually works as well to unify the whole lands all the way from the south to Jerusalem as a huge empire, which before was just everybody was very divided? Is it Is it at that point when Yemen becomes part of this pre-caliphate sort of thing?
Yeah, it's a pre-caliphate. There is no one unifying religion for the whole thing right now. The verses which is collected, which Hanzala did, are not being collected for any religious purpose. It's just the entertainment of the time and the relationship. So you try and force a religion on everybody, they're going to be upset about it. But if you just give them entertainment, they're not going to be upset about it. There are plenty of people out there who, even today, like to watch Jesus movies or TV shows without even regarding themselves as Christian, but they enjoy the entertainment of the Jesus movie or Jesus TV show. For example, Son of God was a very popular TV show with plenty of people who were not Christian. The Passion of the Christ, Mel Gibson's story, is very popular, even with people who aren't Christian, because it's just good entertainment. And I think that's what we have to. And by the way, there are significant differences between these. The very popular one is The Chosen going on right now, and it's significantly different. The Chosen is completely heretical from a point of view of Orthodox Christianity. If you want to, but if you ask most people, young people these days, if they know what's written in the Gospel, or if they know anything about the Chosen TV series, they've probably seen an episode of the Chosen TV series, and they probably haven't got any knowledge of what's written in the Gospels, right? So their knowledge of Jesus is based on what's his name? It's I can't remember his name. Dallas, the guy who Dallas Jenkins is based on the vision of Jesus in the mind of Dallas Jenkins, as Dallas Jenkins has presented him in his TV show, which is completely heretical and got nothing to do. It's just like vaguely similar to the New Testament, vaguely similar, but really the dialogue, the script, the story between him and Mary Magdalene, it's all made up by Dallas Jenkins and his team, so, but it's good entertainment. And that's how it was, I think, at that time. This is basically religious-based entertainment to unite people in a very informal way. Later, it was codified into the Quran, but at that time, it wasn't. It was just entertainment. Have I gone off point?
No, this is actually on point. So when we actually think about Umar, and actually this is something that I have experienced many times, we're actually thinking about everything that happened, and it's all religion. But these are people that they are there, they have their political agendas, they have to conquer land, they have their own ambitions. So if we actually think about Umar, and then we remove the religious element, he is, for need of a better word, a king. And seeing as he has now accomplished so much under his leadership, is he now having the kingdoms of the south being in partnership with him, or
Well, the
part
kingdom of
of
South
almost.
failed a long time ago. Himyarite kingdom was already finished by the time he arrived there. But despite it falling, people are still operating peacefully with each other, and he sees something beneficial in this, and he learned something when he was down there. Even though the Himyarite kingdom was over by the time he got down there, he still learns from the people of that area a lot.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. But then because he actually comes out from there, he has his friends probably in the politics and in all of the different spheres. And now
mhm,
he has gone all the way to the north and
mhm,
then all the way to Jerusalem. So
mhm.
at that point, is he still, say, standing alone with his armies from the old Lahmed kingdom, or is he now having alliances with people as far as the south? Because they've been friends for
Yeah, I think
20
he's
years.
tried. Yeah, I think he's united a good portion of the Arab Peninsula has been united under him, and he's got support from Iraq as well. He's got support from Egypt as well. So he's got that area under his control, if you like, or at least in alliance with him. But then he's
Okay,
he's
pre
assassinated.
pre pre-caliphate, but he doesn't own the lands. He doesn't rule the lands, but he has all of his friends in
Hmm.
in many different areas. So they
Hmm.
are all, say, on the same page. They are not going to
Yeah,
attack each other, and they are going
right.
to also help each other whenever they
Yeah,
want to
it's
go
a
on a
good
conquest
political
or whatever.
alliance. He has a strong
Yep.
political alliance with the whole of the Arabian Peninsula, with Iraq and with Egypt and Syria. So it's a strong political alliance. But as I said, he's assassinated. But I think he did appoint his successor. So the next person is of the same mind as him, even though uh, uh, he was killed. So the next successor continues his work. So he clearly appointed who his successor should be. His successor is clearly in alliance also with Ali, who is Hani ibn Qabisa, still alive and still ruling in Hira, where he historically has been throughout this whole time. And after Uthman, there's a person called Uthman. I don't think he's called Uthman. I think he's called the Tajik, to be honest. After him, um, we have Hani ibn Qabisa comes along and very briefly at least um, takes control of the situation. But we have really run out of time for this show, so we'll have to continue this conversation another time, and we'll pick up at that. So where would you like to pick up next time? Would you like to do this again?
Yes, that would be great. I'm going to actually start putting together lots of questions, things that say appear in the narrative which are a little bit odd, to see if we can make sense of those. But
Mm-hmm.
if we can pick up exactly in this very exact at this very exact spot, that would be phenomenal.
Yeah, I think it would be very helpful if we just carry on having our little chats together, and other people who like to listen in can listen in, and maybe they can also post some questions underneath. If you have been listening and you've enjoyed it, please do post some questions underneath. Hopefully before next week, or at least before the next time JC and I get together and have a chat, we can have a look at your questions as well and bring them into the discussion if necessary. I would like to thank JC for joining me today. I think you've really helped clarify this period of time, and I look forward to further conversations with you. I have only one comment here in the question. We have a greeting here from somebody saying, this is from HH saying, "May God bless you both in the fight against evil Islam." And there is also a good Islam, which we hope to present to you, a historical and truth-based Islam. But yeah, the evil Islam is the Abbasid Islam, which has hidden and buried all of this truth under layers of falsehood. Thank you for your comment, HH. And we also have somebody called Jewish who says, if you keep reading, it says to take the Messiah as Lord with Allah. That's right. The verse does say that they have taken their... That's the verse, chapter 9, verse 30, where it says they have taken their Echbarhum and Rahmanhum as lords instead of God and the Messiah, is exactly what it says. So it means that you have to take God and Messiah as your Lord, not your teacher. So thank you for that. Yeah, that's exactly what it says. And then we have somebody called Amr 112 at the tube says, I think that the reason there is no historical Muhammad is Islam was whitewashed, where the assassination of Uthman was turned into the night of the Hijrah, and the name Muhammad was an embellishment. Well, it's a long story. I do recommend, Amr, if you try to watch some of the other videos, and I recommend you get hold of a book by Robert Hoyland, which it's called Seeing Islam as Other Saw It, and it's got a lot of references in there which you should read through before you formulate any kind of opinion on this. Definitely read that book. If you can get hold of another book called Diversity and Rabbanization, that's also quite helpful in understanding the origins of the whole thing. But definitely the Abbasids created what we know today as the religion of Islam was created by the Abbasids in the 8th century, in the latter half of the 8th century and onwards. And what we're talking about is the 7th century, the early half of the 7th century, and trying to understand what was on the ground at that time, even before the Umayyads came along. And so it's all a big mess, but it's not indecipherable. We can get to the bottom of it if we are careful. And I'm very grateful to JC for coming along and helping clarify this story. I don't think we would get there without your help. So do like and subscribe if you like the video. Don't forget to click that like button and the subscribe and the notification bell so you make sure you can hear when we're on again. We don't always talk about Islam on this channel, but when we do, we get to the bottom of things. So please do post your questions, and we look forward to having you back on the show with us again in the future. Thank you, JC. God bless you all.
Well,
yeah.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure, and I look forward to our next conversations.
Me too. Okay, take care, everybody, and Shabbat Shalom. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.